everyone, my name is Charlene and today I have two very exciting announcements to share with you. So I have been working on these for a while and I'm really excited to finally be able to share them with you. These are things that are going to be going on either in winter months or all of next year. I've been putting a lot of time into these, so I really hope you guys enjoy them. But the first one is that I am doing a winter treasure hunt. This is a bookish winter treasure hunt, so it's all based on reading certain books. But back in the fall, I made a fall scavenger hunt for you guys. And I will be honest, I did not do a good job of promoting this and, checking in to see how are you guys doing or anything like that. I very much dropped the ball on that one. But it was also the first one I did, and I think part of me just wasn't sure how to keep up with it, how to keep promoting it, especially when I completed it in the month of September, which I was not expecting to do. It was one of those things that it was really easy when I was still working on it and I could talk about my progress. Then, I might get other people talking about how they're doing, but once I finished it, not really. So I apologize for dropping the ball on that, but this one is going to work quite a bit differently. So I am going to be doing things quite a bit differently. So I will put the graphic up here that I have made for it. This one, when I did the one for the fall, I also made a spring scavenger hunt for anybody who is in the southern hemisphere, because I realize a lot of us live in the northern hemisphere and we do stuff for fall when it's spring for everyone in the southern hemisphere. We do stuff for summer when it's their winter, and so on. And so it doesn't always feel fair that there's all this stuff for our seasons, not as much for the southern hemisphere seasons. But trying to put two of these together for winter and for summer, it was already a lot trying to figure out how I wanted to put this together, how I wanted it to work. So I apologize to anyone in the southern hemisphere that it says winter and it looks very wintry, but I promise the prompts that are on here are not based around winter. So regardless of what hemisphere you live in, you can complete these prompts, you can participate. I hope that doesn't deter you if it's not actually winter for you. But when I made the scavenger hunt, I mentioned that I tend to like treasure hunts more than scavenger hunts. You get a clue, it leads you to the next clue, to the next clue, to the next clue, until you finally get to the prize. And I wasn't really sure how to do that on here as just something bookish and fun to do for a couple months, 3 months, however long it might be. But this is what I've come up with, so hopefully this works. But the way this is set up is you have 3 houses that you can choose to visit. There's one house that honestly to me has a little bit more of a creepy or maybe a little more of a gothic vibe. It does look a little bit unsettling. Then we have a Victorian house, which is obviously a much older house, has a lot of history to it. And then we have a log cabin, which is just very warm and cozy. And yes, the lines look like they're traveling away from the house instead of to the house, but that was the easiest way to design the printable. And sorry if my ears are jingling. I didn't think about that when I was putting these on, that yeah, they're jingle bells, they make noise. So sorry if that gets distracting. But the idea is that you're kind of traveling through these houses. And each one will lead to a different treasure chest. However, only one of these treasure chests actually has treasure in them. The other 2 are empty. There is nothing in them. The way it will work for you to complete the treasure hunt challenge is you can kind of do this one of 2 ways. You can pick a house and complete all of the prompts for it. Then if you still have time, go to the next house, complete all of the prompts, the next house, complete all the prompts. Or you can start at one house and bounce back and forth between houses as long as you're completing the prompts in the order they are for each house. So you could say complete the first 2 prompts for the creepier house, then go and complete the first prompt for the log cabin. Then complete the 3rd prompt for the creepier house, go complete the first prompt for the Victorian house, and so on and so forth. Again, as long as each house is being completed in order, that's really all that matters. And there will be a giveaway attached to this because you're on a treasure hunt. It feels like there should be a prize, or at least the potential for a prize, if you complete this. So the way it's going to work is for each prompt that you complete in the house that actually has the treasure, you will get one entry into a giveaway. So if you complete all 5 prompts for the correct house, you will have 5 entries into the giveaway. Any of the prompts you complete for the houses that do not have treasure, great job on completing the prompts. Honestly, because there's 15 of them on here. But unfortunately, they will not get you drawings into the giveaway. Which is why it could be beneficial to bounce back and forth between houses, especially if you don't think you can read 15 books in 2 months. Because this is going from January 1st to February 28th. I thought about starting this in December, but with so much going on in December, I decided that's probably not the best idea. So it's just going to be January and February. So if you think you can complete 15 prompts in 2 months, feel free to do just one house at a time. But if you think you're probably not going to, it might be more to your advantage to bounce back and forth between the houses. So if you only complete 1 prompt for every house, you're guaranteed 1 entry. If you only complete 2 prompts per house, you're guaranteed 2 entries. And then for the giveaway, the prize will be a $25 Amazon gift card. And it's 25 US dollars. So if you live in another country, as long as you live in a country where you do have access to Amazon, you can receive gift cards, you are eligible for this giveaway. And it will be, if you live outside of the US, it will be whatever the equivalent of 25 US dollars is. So that will be the prize. Only 1 person will receive it, but like I said, for every prompt you complete in the correct house, you will get 1 entry into the drawing, up to the possibility of 5 in total. Now, I will be honest, as of the time of filming, I don't know which house is the correct house. I have not picked it yet, and I have not picked it prior to filming this because I didn't want to know and have that potentially sway the way I talk about the houses in any way. So I literally have no idea. I will find out when I do the drawing. And how you can let me know what you have completed on here. Unfortunately, the only way I know of to do it easily is through Instagram. So if you post on Instagram, either in post or in your stories, tag me in it. I am on there. It's Charlene Coffee and a Book, all underscores in between. Or you can use the hashtag CB Winter Treasure Hunt. CB standing for coffee book because CAAB seemed a little bit unnecessary. So if you tag me in one of those 2 ways, I will keep a list of who has completed prompts for each house. And then whenever I go to do the drawing, I will randomly pick which house actually has the treasure. And also I will draw the giveaway winner based on who completed prompts in that house. And I will post all of this in a video in March. So that is how you will find out the results. Hopefully all of that made sense. If anything in my explanation doesn't make sense, let me know down in the comments below and I will try to clear any of that up. But the other thing I want to go into are all of the prompts so that you know what's included in the prompts, what is not, all of that. Now, I did try to keep with a similar theme or feel for each of the houses, mostly based on genre, but unless stated you specifically need to read this type of book, you can read a book from any genre, as long as it fits the prompt. So we're going to start with the house all the way on your left, which is the creepier looking house. And the first prompt for this one is to read a book with a gothic feel. So this could literally be a gothic book. It could be a book that just has more of that gothic, creepier undertone, but maybe isn't actually classified as a gothic novel. As long as it just has that creepy, unsettling feeling to it. That's the main thing. The second prompt is to read a dystopian book. So anything where it has a society where, you know, the idea is this is a utopia, this is perfect for everybody, but it really isn't, that will count. The third prompt is to read a book with an unsettling cover. So there just has to be something on the cover. It might be the colors that are used, it might be some of the design to it, but in some way it just kind of gives this unsettling feeling. Something about this book is just kind of off, or something just isn't quite right. However that looks to you. The fourth prompt is to read a book set in the future. So yes, generally speaking, this is going to be a sci-fi book, but the main thing is that it's set in the future from when the book was written. So, like, you could read 2001: A Space Odyssey, because no, 2001 is not in the future at this point, but it was written in the 1960s, and at that point, 2001 was in the future. So, anything set in the future from the time it was written will count for this one. And the fifth and final prompt for this house is to read a book that intimidates or scares you. So, this could be a horror book, this could be a thriller book. It could be a big book. It could be a book that intimidates you because of the genre it's in. Whatever the reason might be, if a book is intimidating to you, or is a book that scares you for some reason, or that you think will scare you, it will count for this prompt. And apparently I talked about my houses out of order because the next one is actually the log cabin. So the first prompt for this one is to read a book with magic on the cover. And by magic on the cover, it could literally have the word magic on the cover in the title. It could be part of a series title. It could be that you kind of see swirls on the cover or sparkly images on the cover that is supposed to be some kind of magic being used. It could be just anything where you can see that a character is using magic, like maybe they have a wand, maybe they have a cauldron where they're making a potion. Anything like that would count. The second prompt is to read a book that takes place in your home state or country. And mostly I put country on the list because not every country has states. And even ones that have states or provinces or what have you, finding a book set in your particular one may not always be easy. So, for the most part, I would encourage, if you are from the US, to read a book set in your home state, if you can. But, in general, as long as you at least read a book that's set in your home country, it counts for this prompt. The third prompt is to read a book with a mystery. So this could be a mystery novel. That would absolutely count. A thriller would also count. But it could be a fantasy book that has a mystery. It could be a sci-fi book that has a mystery. As long as there's something that is being kept hidden or being kept a secret that the characters are trying to figure out, it would count for this one. The next one is to read a book with a character who doesn't know their parentage or heritage. So I did include both because it might be a character who doesn't know who at least one of their parents are. Or it might be a character who's delving into their family history because they know their parents, maybe know their grandparents, but they don't know where their family came from before then. And so they're delving into their family history to try to find out, where do we come from? What was our family like prior to my parents or grandparents? Any book where one of those is the case, they don't know who a parent is, or they're trying to learn more about their family history, either of those would count. And prompt number 5 is to read a book that takes place in another world, which, yes, is predominantly going to be fantasy. So it could be a high fantasy that completely takes place in another world. It could be a portal fantasy where a character travels somewhere. It could be a sci-fi where it takes place on another planet. Anything like that would count for this one. And then finally, moving on to our Victorian house, the first prompt is to read a book that is set in a time before 1900. If you wanted to read a nonfiction, if it's about a time before 1900, that would count as well. Otherwise, in general, the story just needs to be set sometime before the year 1900. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be historical fiction. It could also be a classic, because most of them take place before 1900 because they were written before 1900. Prompt number 2 is to read a book by an author who is no longer living. Doesn't matter how long they've been gone. If an author is no longer living, any books by them will count. The third prompt is to read the oldest book on your shelves. And that could be the book you've owned the longest. It could be the book that was published the longest time ago. It could be literally the oldest book on your shelf in that it itself was published the longest time ago. So you could have a classic on your shelf that was published originally in the 1800s, even though your edition was published in the 2000s. Or you could have a book on your shelf that was published in, say, the 1930s, and your actual copy was published in the 1930s. Or it could be a book that you've owned for 10 years and you still haven't read it. Any of those would count for this prompt. The fourth prompt is to read a book set in a time period that you want to know more about. Again, if you want to read nonfiction, it can be about a time period you want to know more about in that regard, or it can be a fiction book that's just set in that time period, whatever that time period may be. And the fifth and final prompt for this one is to read a book set in a country other than your own. So for the log cabin, you needed to read a book set in your home country. For this one, it needs to be set somewhere other than your home country. All right, so those are all of the prompts for the treasure hunt. If you have any questions about the prompts or about the rules, how it all works, again, feel free to let me know down in the comments below and I will answer it to the best of my ability. All right, so now that we're done with that announcement, I have one more big announcement to make. And I'm excited about this one. I'm also kind of nervous about it. Mostly because I know there are a lot of these cropping up in the booktube community. So I don't know how many people are going to be excited about it or participate, but I'm hoping some of you are. And that is, I am starting a book club in January. This book club I am calling the Distant Lands Book Club. And this book club is going to be fantasy and sci-fi books. Honestly, when I originally came up with the title, my thought was, I want all of the books that I pick for it to be set somewhere other than Earth. So if you saw my post in my community tab, where I was asking you guys, what are some books you would recommend that don't take place on Earth? This is why I was asking. I really wanted those to be the types of books we read in this book club exclusively. However, after going through a multitude of books and looking through a lot of different things, I came to the realization that with some of the parameters that I had in mind, it was going to be hard to have a book club where we only read books that take place somewhere other than Earth. So kind of the idea with this book club is that we are going to be visiting different places. In some cases, yes, it will be somewhere other than Earth, but it can just be traveling through a different location that is separated from us by either space or time. So I am including historical fantasy as books that can end up on here. Futuristic sci-fi could be on here. More so the ones that are like distant future, not near future, because the distant future books, society is going to look a lot different than it does now. Whereas near future, it's going to look very similar to our world today. So it doesn't really feel like you're traveling to somewhere distant from where you currently are. So yes, all of the books will have some kind of distance from us today. The reason why I was having a hard time with just books that take place somewhere other than Earth is because I did want to have some parameters with this to make sure I'm not asking too much of the people who are joining the book club. One of those was that I didn't want the books to be over 500 pages long. I didn't want to be assigning these big books every month or occasionally, because sometimes those can take a long time to get through. And picking them as book club books consistently was going to feel like a lot. And I did think about doubling up months at times and saying, okay, we can have 2 months to read a book that's over 500 pages, but I wasn't sure if that was the best idea. So I may see about doing that in the future, but for next year, we're not going to do any books over 500 pages. One of the other big parameters is I wanted the books to be part of series that, for the most part, have 4 books or less in them, or I want them to be standalones. There might occasionally, on a rare occasion, be a book that's part of a 5-book series. I will not go over 5 books. And they are shorter books, but I don't want to feel like every time we read a book for the book club, I'm basically asking you to start a big series. And that was the problem I was running into, is finding, especially fantasy series, that have fewer than 5 books and the books are under 500 pages was not easy. Finding books that take place in a fantasy world, not hard. But finding books that fit those two parameters was not easy. And then I also want to make sure that, as much as I am able to, that the books we are reading are either Christian fiction or clean fiction. And I will specify with every book that I pick if it is Christian fiction or clean fiction. So if you have a preference for one or the other, you know what you're getting into before we pick up the book. And of course, therein lies the hard part, is trying to find books and make sure, if they're not Christian fiction, that they are at least clean. And I did want to try to get more of a 50-50 split between Christian fiction and clean fiction. I think with the books I kind of have in mind for next year, I think it leans slightly heavier towards Christian fiction, but there are still books I have in mind that are clean fiction, not specifically Christian fiction. Also, we're going to be alternating every month between adult and YA books. So the odd number months will be adult books, even numbers will be YA. And I do tend to read more fantasy than sci-fi. So there's going to be one sci-fi book chosen for every 2 fantasy that we read. Sorry if getting into all of that is a little bit complicated, but I at least wanted to explain kind of my idea behind this book club and how I was making decisions on the books that I picked. So I am going to go ahead and let you guys know the books that I have picked for January and February, because I want to make sure that if you're wanting to participate, you do have an opportunity to get the books before the book club starts. So for the most part, I will be announcing the book club books 2 months in advance. So that way you have a better chance of having a hold come in or having time to purchase the book before that month rolls around. This one for January is the only one that you're only going to get about a month's notice, because I'm literally just announcing the book club. But the first pick for the book club is Healer by Linda Windsor. And this is a Christian historical fantasy. Honestly, as I've done some more looking into it, I almost feel like putting it on this list and calling it fantasy is stretching it a little bit. The main way that this is fantasy, as far as I can tell, is the fact that it is set during the reign of King Arthur. But obviously, you're going to have Merlin, so there is the possibility for some magic. But it is set in 6th century Scotland, so quite a ways away from where we are. But I have seen it classified as historical fantasy on Goodreads and other places, so I went ahead and picked it, and honestly, the cover looks fairly wintry. So it's one of those where I'm like, it might be stretching it, the rest will not stretch it this far. But it does look like a good winter read, and I do really enjoy Arthurian legend, so I'm really curious to check this one out. But in this book, we follow Brenna, who has been basically on the run for 20 years because there was a prophecy made about her, and her kinsmen are wanting her to fulfill the prophecy, and their enemies are wanting to hunt her down so that she can't fulfill the prophecy. But this prophecy seems to point towards a warrior queen, and she's more of a healer, so she doesn't even feel like this prophecy is really meant for her. So she's been living alone in the wilderness with her pet wolf, but then one day she comes across a man and she heals him from his injuries. It sounds like there's going to be a romance between them, but I don't know if he's from the enemy side or what the reason is that this may not be the best relationship. That's the gist of what I know about the story. But again, I do know it's based on Arthurian legend. I know there are Arthur characters in the story. This is one I've had on my radar for a year or two. And being classified as historical fantasy, I decided to go ahead and add this one as our January pick. And then the pick for February is going to be Cities of Smoke and Starlight by Allie Ernest. Now, Allie Ernest is a Christian writer, but this book is specifically a clean sci-fi, or actually she classifies it as a science fantasy. So I think it's supposed to be a blend of both. But this is a steampunk novel, so it has that sci-fi feel to it, even if there's also some magic in it. and I guess I didn't specify, Healer is adult, this one is YA. And in this one, we're following Case, who is a pilot, and Hallie, who was a student, but has recently lost her job, can't pay her tuition, and she's given a chance to negotiate an alliance for her country, and she decides to take it so she doesn't have to return home. But agreeing to this means having to put up with Case. And in her description, it says it's a science fantasy perfect for fans of Dune, Pride and Prejudice, and those who believe Rogue One should have had a romantic subplot. So yes, there is going to be a romance in this book. I do know that much. And I guess I didn't specify this either, but both books are part of a trilogy. So there's only 3 books in the series. So I did stick to my parameters. And I will be having co-hosts for both of these books, but I'm still getting that finalized for the first few months. So if I have that finalized by the time this video comes up, I will have my co-host link down in the description. If not, I will announce it by the time I do my January TBR for January, and then I'll announce one in February with my February TBR. And I guess I kind of forgot the most important part about this book club. It's going to be hosted on Fable. So I will have a link to the book club on Fable down in the description below. So if you do have a Fable account, you can go ahead and join. If you don't, feel free to sign up. But from what I was seeing of the different options of places to host a book club, this just felt like the best one. So that's why I'm going ahead and using it. Also know if you're not on Fable, but you are on Goodreads, you can import your Goodreads into Fable so it will track your reading. It is a reading tracker just like Goodreads is, but there's other aspects to it that make it a lot better if you want to host a book club on there. I will also be sharing information on Instagram, so if you want to follow me over there, or I will have a book club page so that way you guys can get announcements if you're not on Fable, like when discussions are going to happen, what the next book is going to be, things like that over on Instagram as well. So if you don't want to get the Fable app, but you have Instagram, you can at least get the updates there. And right now, my thought is the first Saturday of the following month. I don't know if that will actually be the case. I will let you know for sure. But I will be having a live stream discussion for each book early in the month after we read the book. I know a lot of people do them in the same month that the book is assigned. They just do it late in the month. I am always one of those people that seems to be late to the game when it comes to book club books. And every time it seems like I pick up the book and then realize I have 2 days to read it before the live stream discussion. So, for people who are late to the game like I often am, I'm planning to have my live stream discussions early in the following month. So there won't be a live stream discussion for Healer in January, it will be in early February. Cities of Smoke and Starlight, the live stream discussion will be in early March. Those will be here on YouTube, so you don't have to have the Fable app or Instagram for any of that. But the announcements for some of those will be on Instagram and on Fable as well, if you want to follow me over there. So just in general, in case any of that was not clear, because I'm trying to keep track of all the information and make sure I get all of it to you and hopefully make sense. But in case it didn't, links for everything will be down in the description. I will have my Instagram linked, the book club Instagram linked, and the Fable book club link, all down in the description. So if you missed any of that, not sure what's included, it's all down in the description. Same with the treasure hunt. So I think that's all I have. Again, if any of that didn't make sense or you have more questions, feel free to ask them down in the comments below. I will answer your questions as best I can. It's a lot of information running in my head that I'm trying to get out. So hopefully it all makes sense, and I'm sorry if it doesn't. I think that's all I have at this point. I think I've rambled long enough about all of this. So I hope you guys are excited about these because I'm really excited to get them both started. Let me know if you're planning on participating in either one of these. Also, if you have any thoughts on them, you can let me know that as well. And other than that, I hope you all are having a wonderful Christmas season, and I'll see you later.